All your favorite wrestling shows rolled into one. Welcome to the We Book It podcast. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and good evening. Welcome to another edition of the We Book It podcast, and you're in for a very, very special episode tonight because we are combining two episodes into one. Yes, that's right. We're doing the Who's Next in NXT as well as your AEW Dynamite recap. I am your host, Coach. Shout out to Virgil being my producer again here tonight while he's taking care of some things at home. I appreciate him for hanging there with me on this. I know we're a day late, maybe a couple days late if you're thinking about NXT, but we're going to get things started right away. We're going to start with our NXT recap first. We start out the show. We get already a match. Jada Parker versus Callie Armstrong, and this was a very physical match to begin with. Both have a hard-hitting style of offense. They love to trash talk. It seemed like anytime Miss Parker would try to build momentum, Armstrong would cut her off. And then finally, but with the crowd behind her, Armstrong got a little heelish tactic there and raked the eyes of Parker, hit her finisher for the win. This was a really good match for Armstrong, and I think definitely something that's going to help her keep getting a mini push right now. I don't think anything championship-wise, but it is going to lead to probably big things for her in the future. As for Jada Parker, she just feels she's lost in the shuffle right now, and it's a shame because I think she is a very, very good talent, and the booking right now is not the best for her. I will say that this could be a character thing because later on in the show, we do get Jada Parker backstage and talks about she's obviously very frustrated, but who else is there? But Natalia, aka Natty, is there, and she is giving Jada some pointers and saying, if you really want to win, come see me. So could see an interesting dynamic there. Of course, everyone jokes about that it was Natty that took the pay cut because now obviously she's in NXT, but that's for another time. All right, we get to our next match, which is Jasper Troy versus Jackson Drake. This was obviously a mismatch from the beginning because Jasper Troy is very strong, a lot of power. However, Drake had his fellas behind him. He had Baylor and Smokes on the outside distracting and protecting him. And this was kind of it was more back and forth than I thought it was going to be. But as Jasper Troy threw Baylor and Smokes out of the way, it was Micah Lockwood that laid out Troy with a body slam, and then Drake hit a 450 splash for the win. The flow in itself was okay. Like I said, this was more back and forth than I thought, but the flow just didn't seem to match up with it. But again, the Vanity Project was the real story about how they were distracting Troy, and Troy did a great job of handling of the 3-on-1. But the real story here is Lockwood, and that's really what anybody's going to be talking about after this was Lockwood slamming Jasper Troy down. I am curious to see how they're going to kind of build this heat for Lockwood and the rest of the Vanity Project because while they do have some heat, it's not as strong as great heels have. So I'm curious to see what this faction is going to do later on. All right, we get to our next segment, which is Zarya arriving to the ring, having a little bit of swagger behind her, and talked about how she is so happy that Sol Ruca is no longer in NXT, and talked about how she has her eyes set on the Women's North American Championship. Then Tatum Paxley comes out says that she understands how Zarya is feeling, and that although that she likes what she's feeling, she's not going to take the title away. Then all of a sudden, Lizzie Rain came in, and then Nikita Lyons came in as well. Both of them calling their shots. Lyons and Rain start brawling, and as Rain gets sent out of the ring, Zarya then takes out Nikita Lyons, and then Tatum Paxley as well. So I want to be right about this. The interruptions have always been a great segment in wrestling, whatever company you love to watch. I think this one might have been a little too much. This was a little over-the-top interruption. Also, why are we still having Lizzie Rain and Nikita Lyons fighting each other? I think Rain deserves to be in the title picture right away. Don't let this thing keep going with them. But on the bright side, at least we get a good matchup with Tatum Paxley and Zarya. I am curious to see, are they going to pull the trigger on Zarya getting the belt and let Tatum be a semi-transitional champion? So we'll see what happens there. We get to our next match, which is a mixed tag team match between Lola Vice and Mr. Iguana, and Izzy Dame and Nico Vance. Of course, you always got to love Mr. Iguana when he's in the ring. Him and Vance did a really good job of setting the tone. It was Vance, though, that had a really strong showing, knocked Iguana out with a discus headbutt. And then, of course, you had Izzy on the side making sure that a tag couldn't be made. However, when Lola got that tag, she just plowed right through Izzy with a series of hard strikes. And then as Vance tried to make the save, hip attacks were hit by Vice and Mr. Iguana. Then a strong roadhouse by Vice as Vance stopped the referee count. Vance drug the referee out of the ring and then took out Mr. Iguana outside, and then there was a rocket kick for the victory. This was a good match. Just the booking was a little confusing for it. Despite, you're supposed to have these two in AAA. You have Iguana and Vice as your mixed tag team champions. They looked all out of sorts in this match. They did not look like they were a cohesive team. And yet they were dominated pretty much the entire time. That just gets to the point of where all three promotions in WWE, you have the main roster, you have NXT, you have AAA. They don't know what each other's doing. And this was very, very clear with this match. Vice should not be losing like this, especially earlier in her reign, and especially against Izzy Dame, who has just been on a losing streak recently. This was very questionable booking, and again, contradicting each other's promotions, like what the main roster does with the El Grande Americano storyline, how they are flip-flopped in AAA, where Kaiser's Americano is the heel, Gable's is the face, but then in AAA, it's vice versa. So, guys, you need to talk it out. You need to make sure you're watching each other's promotions. But But, oh well. We'll see what happens next week. We then get to another tag team match. This time is a men's tag team match between Dark State's Cutler James and Osiris Griffin and Hank and Tank. So it looked like there's obviously some tension between Dark State, thank God, because I'm tired of that faction. I think that was never a good one to begin with. But Griffin and James were trying to keep the peace between Lennox and Sugars, but that just kept allowing Hank and Tank to stay in. Hank got the hot tag and nearly took the win with a double team shoulder tackle on James, but Griffin was there to break up the pin. Griffin then turned it around and nearly defeated Tank after a Vader bomb, but Hank was in there to break it up. Cutler and Griffin caught Tank diving outside and threw him onto Hank, followed by an assisted spin-out powerbomb for the win. I mean, this match was fine. I always love Hank and Tank. I love watching their matches because they're two big men that show incredible athleticism. But they kind of took a back seat because this was all about Dark State and their interfighting and everything. And it just isn't compelling to me. Again, even in the short little burst that Hank and Tank had, they stood out the most over this match. But again, the Dark State drama, not interesting, and it is falling flat. And I don't know what you want to do with them. Will this win get them back on track, or is Shawn Michaels ready to just break it up? I don't know. It's very, very, very strange. And finally, we get to our main event of the evening, and it is Tony D'Angelo versus Tavion Heights. This one was obviously the match of the night, but no offense to D'Angelo and Heights, low expectations after the previous matches. Heights showed off his athleticism and had the early edge. There was a frog splash that got him a near fall, but it also seemed to get D'Angelo to another level, and he began throwing Heights around. D'Angelo got a near fall, and then Heights followed up with a belly-to-belly suplex, but then Carl Hendricks arrived to distract him from the pin. Miles Bourne then came out and dived onto Hendricks, and this allowed D'Angelo to hit Dead to Rights for the win. Afterwards, D'Angelo and Heights shook hands, only for the same mystery man from last week to attack again. After sending the champion and challenger crashing into the corner, he announced himself as Mason Rook. Again, and as Rook walked away, it was just constant bad-mouthing, talking about how he's here to run NXT. So again, main event was the match of the night, just kind of low expectations, but it was a nice touch of showcasing two different styles of wrestlers with Heights and D'Angelo. And then, of course, obviously you're getting Bourne and Hendricks, their rivalries heating up. And the addition of Rook, although albeit an odd presentation, he is still a major threat to D'Angelo. And this is something that they'll definitely be working on, especially when Vic Joseph doesn't, quote unquote, doesn't know who he is. But I'm pretty sure Vic knows that. Overall, this show, the show was chaos. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, it was rushing stories. The matches felt rushed. They're trying to get the new presentation of stars in, like Lizzie Rain and Naraku, Mason Rook. Those were strong, but it's still falling a little flat. And I know it's probably because of all the recent call-ups. Shawn Michaels has his work cut out for him. I'm not doubting that he's going to do a good job, but this is definitely the after effect of the call-ups, because you don't have time to try and create these new stars right now. They feel rushed. Give them that time. And let them do the work. Let D'Angelo, Vice, Paxley, and Bourne stay in the back next week. Let that new crop of talent come in and get themselves over with the NXT crowd, because if you are just focusing on those four again, that crowd is just going to eat the other people alive. So definitely some work to do in NXT after this week, and it seems like it's been 2 weeks in a row that this has been happening. So we will have to wait and see what happens next week on NXT. Moving forward, we then go to AEW Dynamite, and 3 championship matches on the slate for Dynamite. Of course, we start the opening with the opening of Dynamite is actually a somber one, as we see Tony Schiavone in the ring, and that before the show was to begin, AEW wanted to pay tribute to Ted Turner after the announcement of his death. Very fitting, Tony Schiavone doing the talking about it, because he worked under Turner during the WCW days, and it just made sense. He brought out Sting to even share his thoughts and memories about the late Turner, and Sting just simply put, he was a billionaire who loved pro wrestling. And he said there would be no Sting without Ted Turner, before then hyping up Darby Allin's title match later in the show. And then even said that Tony Khan was similar to Turner in his love for the business. So it was a very somber opening, but a good respect given to Ted Turner. We then get into the matches. We get our first matchup, which is Jon Moxley versus Juice Robinson. And this was a Continental Championship eliminator bout. The announcers filled us on, obviously these two have history from New Japan Wrestling. They came head to head, talked some trash, and then just started going at it with each other. Robinson had most of the control with some chops in the corner, maintained the upper hand. And then as the fight got onto the ring, it was Moxley who took over. Of course, the Death Riders there to kind of distract and everything. I will say for Robinson, he's had inconsistent booking in AEW, but that's been due to injuries. This one felt like for the first time we got to see the same guy who was successful over in New Japan. He felt like a legitimate threat to Moxley. And if you wanted technical wrestling, you were not getting it in this match. This was just two guys, both wacky in the head and just want to beat each other up. The first half of the match was pretty tame, but then it really picked up the pace from the break. They turned into a hard-hitting fight that the crowd was cheering and chanting. Mox then scored the win with a bulldog choke. And however, Juice Robinson does put up a good fight. One thing from this match, I want to talk about Excalibur. And I'm a critic of Excalibur because I do think he is a fine broadcaster. However, I feel like there's always times that he could be better. Him opening up the show, instead of just saying TBS, saying Turner Broadcasting System, nice touch. Well done, Excalibur. But overall, this match was really solid, a great way to open up Dynamite for what was already a loaded card. We then get to our next match, which is a double Jeopardy match between Orange Cassidy and Dax Hardwood. Of course, for Dax, he had the Dogs, Cash Wheeler, Tommaso Ciampa, Vice, and Stokely when he came out. So Cassidy brought out his trios partners, the Young Bucks, Adam Copeland, and Christian Cage for support. This was essentially almost a unofficial lumberjack match because of all the people surrounding the ring and just keeping Cassidy and Harwood in the ring. The beginning of the match was okay, but it was a long time for anybody outside the ring to do anything until any shenanigans happened. And it was good to let Cassidy and Harwood get this kind of moment, but everyone was still kind of focused on what was the outside going to happen. And Cassidy then eventually got the win, but then after that, all hell broke loose. Most of the babyfaces cleared the ring before taking some time to punish Romero and Beretta. It was a good match, but again, everyone was waiting for the chaos, and when the chaos happened, that was good. We get to our next segment, which involves Chris Jericho. He was supposed to have an interview with Renee Paquette backstage, but ended up heading to the ring so he could issue a challenge in front of everybody. He called out the demand, and it didn't take long for Ricochet to show up, in which the crowd booed Ricochet heavily because why not? It's Ricochet. They agreed to have a match, but Ricochet said he wanted it to be Stadium Stampede. He doubted Jericho could find 4 people to have his back. Jericho said even if he couldn't find anyone, he will take them on by himself. He hit Ricochet with the mic and set the Gates of Agony over the top rope. He laid out Rico with a big back elbow before Leona and Bishop Khan took him down. Then, surprisingly, the Hurt Syndicate ran to the ring to make the save and end the segment. So it looks like we know of at least 2 people who will be on Jericho's side, and Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. Not a bad segment. It's not going to be one that you talk about all the time or that you're going to remember for years down the road, but it still did its job, and I am curious to see when this Stadium Stampede will happen. I am assuming it's going to be at Double or Nothing, which is coming up in just a few weeks. All right, we get to our next championship match, which is an AEW International Championship match between Okada and Bryan Keith. This one was more about Bryan Keith showing that he belongs in the title picture. He did a great job never backing down. He took control of the fight early, but of Okada being the veteran that he is, being the smart one that he is, he took away the momentum and hit the Rainmaker clothesline to get the win and retain his belt clean. A couple of thoughts with that. Again, I thought this match was good. It was simple. It was effective. But the main story was talking about Keith showing that he belongs in these title pictures. It was Okada after the match that said he wanted the AEW World title. And, I mean, he's just a great heel. I think even if Okada leaves the Don Callis family at some point, just keep him a heel because he is fantastic. Even his short promos are always great, and it just was. He's a funny heel, but he can also be a dangerous one, and standing him with MJF and AEW is going to be very, very entertaining when you have 2 top heels like that. All right, we get to our next match, which is a women's tag team match between Harley Cameron and Mina Shirakawa against Chris Statlander and Shida. Makes sense why these four are fighting each other. They've had issues in the recent week. Chris and Mina got the match started with a nice exchange. Statlander, of course, getting the crowd involved with her heel work, even though it seemed the crowd was more cheering for her than anything. But after that first little bit, this match did not go very well. Statlander obviously was leading the charge. She looked great. Cameron looked pretty good as well. It just wasn't the best by all four. I think these four women, they're great. They're great on their own, but as a tag team, they definitely struggled to get it going. In the end, Shida got the win for her team with a Falcon Arrow to Harley Cameron. So this match just wasn't that good, and that's a shame. All right, so we get to our main event of Dynamite, and I'll tell you why we'll keep going after this. It is the AEW Championship between Darby Allin and Kevin Knight, and the crowd was in it from the beginning. You had dueling Darby, let's go Darby, let's go Knight chants, and both of them have kind of similar offenses, except Knight is more careful with his high-flying maneuvers, to whereas Darby Allin just does not care. This was just a fantastic match. And then the best part, and I credit Knight for this, selling his leg injury so that Allin could take advantage of it. And Knight even was going for a frog splash and actually hit his leg and then on the mat, and just was slow to the cover. And again, just a great job selling that. There was Darby tried to hit the coffin drop, but then Knight got his knees up, and then finally Allin did get 2 coffin drops to retain the title. After the match, we get MJF coming out and demanding his rematch. Allin reiterated that he needed MJF to put something on the line in order for him to get that rematch. Darby suggested he wanted to put MJF's hair on the line. MJF stormed off, but it was Okada that then came out and repeated his desire for the AEW title, to which Darby accepted the challenge. So that was the end of Dynamite, but we get a special show because we also get an extra hour of Collision here tonight. So we go right into AEW Collision for the night. We get Rush versus AR. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. We get Mike Bailey versus AR Fox, and this was fitting. Bailey was in action right after his Jet Speed tag partner Knight was going. AR Fox, you kind of forgot that he was used on AEW TV in recent months, but this was a simple match. Bailey's speed and martial arts skills and Fox's agility and creativity really created a fun showdown. Bailey did end up scoring the win, but again, got to give credit to Fox. You're hoping that this gets him some more TV time because he is too good to keep down in Ring of Honor. And notably about that, Fox's last AEW match that was not Ring of Honor was back in August on an episode of Collision. So that's how long it has taken Fox to get back on AEW television. We get to our next match, which is a women's match between Jamie Hayter and Sky Blue. This one was interesting because Sky Blue came out and she did not have Julia Hart as a backup. Hayter used her power to the advantage to take control at first, but of course Sky Blue fought back and made sure it felt like an even fight. It was unfortunate because a lot of this match happened during the break, so we didn't really get a good flow of it. However, in the end, Hayter scored the win with the Haterade from the middle rope, and then Julia Hart came out, taunted her from the crowd. So Hayter hit Blue with another clothesline for good measure to send a message to Julia Hart. We then get to our next match, which is Rush versus Manny Lowe. So Rush, this was basically a squash match. I'm just going to lay it out then and tell you. Rush took on a local talent named Manny Lowe, offered a handshake, but then was beaten in less than 30 seconds. El Toro Blanco grabbed a mic and said his catchphrase to wrap things up. Honestly, it's taken me probably longer to talk about this match than how fast Rush beat his opponent. So that was that. So that match happened. So we get to our main event of the evening, and it is a 10-man tag match between the Young Bucks, the Bang Bang Gang, versus the Dogs and the Death Riders. So it was supposed to be a tag match, but you could probably forget about all the tags that were supposed to be made because these guys just were going at it no matter what. There was no point of just two men fighting. This was the right route. Just make it mayhem. They didn't have a lot of time to work with, but they did get it. This was the best route to go. Just mayhem. Nobody really stood out, and that's okay because when you have 10 men like that, as long as each one of them contributed in a way, that's fine. I'm okay with that. While it was fun, obviously no cohesion with it. Hardly any selling going on. Again, just mayhem. Just mayhem. Eventually it was Ace pinning Yuta to get the win for his team. The Bucks and Bang Bang Gang celebrated to wrap up the 3-hour AEW Dynamite and Collision Mash-UP. But this match in itself was, I'll give it credit here. It reminded me of some Attitude Era tag matches to end a Monday Night Raw or a SmackDown, because you always have the guys that are going up against each other, all on opposite teams, and then at some point they forget about everything and each one of them just starts hitting their finishers. It's always a nice callback to that. So while that part was entertaining, if we want to look at it from a technical standpoint, it was not good at all. But either way, a pretty solid AEW lineup. The one question going forward is two questions going forward. How long can Darby Allin continue to do this, these open challenges, accepting these challenges with how much high risk he is and how much he damages his body? How long will he be able to hold up? And then the second question, will MJF accept that challenge, or will he wait his time before accepting it? Very interesting way to go forward in AEW, but there are some good things on the horizon in Dynamite, and we will see what happens next week. So that is going to wrap things up for me here tonight. Again, shout out to Virgil for producing for me tonight while he's busy doing his thing. This has been the Who's Next in NXT and your AEW recap. For more, please like, share, and subscribe to all of our content here at the We Book It podcast. And I will see you all next week for another edition of AEW Recap.